Don't put a little rubber chandra on the floor. Namaste Saraswati Oramani Pracharine Nirvitesa Shunyavadi Atyajade Sitarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhangsa Prabhakacharya Asadhara Sadushi Shriman His Divine Grace Kalisi Bhakti-Vedanta Swaraj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hariva Slava Zarani Bhaktam Slava Shri Guru Shri Grangi Namo Vishnu Braya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Bacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Siddharna Om Agana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shigaro Shiyuta Padakamalam Shigaram Vaishnavam Scha Shirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vrijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Sakans Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prashubhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patiranam Bhavanebhyo Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 3. Chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized, text 31. Swadharmam api chaveksha navikampitum arhasi dhamyadi yudach treyonyat kshatriyasya navidyate Swadharmam api chaveksha navikampitum arhasi dharam yadi yudach treyoyat kshatriyasya navidyate.
Swadharmam api chaveksha
Yudach Kshatriyasya navidyate. Swadharmam api chaveksha kampitam arsi dharam yadi yunyam chayatyak kshatriyasya navidyate. One of the Manajis. Swadharmam api chaveksha navikampitam arasi dharam yadi yunyan chayanyat kshatriyasya navidyate. Swadharmam, one's own religious principles. Api, also. Cha, indeed. Aveksha, considering. Na, never. Vikampitum, to hesitate. arhasi, you deserve. Dharamyat, for religious principles. He, indeed, yudat, then fighting. Shreya, better engagement. Anyat, any other. Kshatriyasya, of the Kshatriya. Na, does not. Vidyate, exist. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. Considering your specific duties as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Purport. Of the 4 orders of social administration, the second order for the matter of good administration is called Kshatriya. Shat means hurt. One who gives protection from harm is called Kshatriya. Trayate, to give protection. The Kshatriyas are trained for killing in the forest. Kshatriya would go into the forest and challenge a tiger face to face and fight with the tiger with his sword. When the tiger is killed, it would be offered the royal order of cremation. This system has been followed even up to the present day by the Kshatriya kings of Jaipur state. The Kshatriyas are especially trained for challenging and killing because religious violence is sometimes a necessary factor. Therefore, Kshatriyas are never meant for accepting directly the order of sannyas or renunciation. Nonviolence in politics may be a diplomacy, but is never a factor or principle. In the religious law books it is stated, Ahaveshu miton yonyam jigam santo mahishita swargam yudamana param shaktya swargam yantya paran mukha Jagneshu Pashavo Brahmam Hayante Sadatam Dvijai Samskrita Kila Mantraischa Tepi Swargam Apapnodyuvan. In the battlefield, a king or a Kshatriya, while fighting another king envious of him, is eligible for achieving heavenly planets after death. As the Brahmins also attain the heavenly planets by sacrificing animals in the sacrificial fire. Therefore, killing on the battlefield on religious principles and killing animals in the sacrificial fire are not at all considered to be acts of violence, because everyone is benefited by the religious principles involved. The animal sacrifice gets human life immediately without undergoing the gradual evolutionary process from one form to another. And the Kshatriyas killed on the battlefield also attain the heavenly planets, as do the Brahmins who attain them by offering sacrifice. There are 2 kinds of swadharmas, specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of his patila body in accordance with the religious principles in order to achieve liberation. When one is liberated, one's swadharma, specific duty, becomes spiritual and is not in the material bodily concept. In the bodily concept of life, there are specific duties for the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. So dharma is ordained by the Lord, and this will be clarified in the 4th chapter. On the bodily plane, so dharma is called varnashram dharma, or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of varnashram dharma, or specific duties in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body attained. Discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with the duties of higher authorities serves to elevate one to the higher status of life. So the verse again, Sudharma api chaveksham navikampitam arhasi dharmadi yunyasya onyat kshatriyasya navidyate. Considering your specific duties as kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadhyade Satarne. Krishna has concluded his explanation to Arjuna about the difference between the body and the soul. And even if Arjuna did not understand the difference between the body and the soul, now Krishna is going to deal with performing sacrifice for Vishnu, or varnashram. Varnashram is not simply a collection of rules and regulations to live by. Ultimately, it's Jaga Vaya Vishnu. There is one principle that purifies, that is coming in contact with Krishna. Everything has to do with our relation with Krishna. We have no closer relationship to anything than to Krishna, eternally. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudani maya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as our machines made in the material nature. So no one is going to accompany us, has accompanied us, or will accompany us, life after life. The only person who goes along with us everywhere is Paramatma. Therefore, tameva sharanam gacha, sara bhavena bharata, tat prasada param shantis, stanam prapsati shasvatam. Therefore, Arjuna, surrender unto him in all respects, and that way you'll attain eternal peace in the transcendental abode. Now, to surrender to Krishna means to at least accept that he's the controller, the enjoyer, and the friend of everyone. And therefore everyone can be engaged in his service through the Varna and Ashram system, which culminates in sacrifice for Vishnu. Yagya by Vishnu. So the Shudras, they assist. The Vaishyas, they collect the ingredients for they produce the ingredients for the sacrifice. And the Kshatriyas, they arrange for the sacrifice. And the Brahmins, they chant the mantras at the sacrifice and give directions how it should be performed. Now, why is Krishna pleased by sacrifice? Because it's simply he's asked that that be done. In other words, all the Vedic mantras begin with Om, and they're all directed at Krishna, satisfying Krishna. So when one performs sacrifice and throws the ghee and the jewels and everything else into the fire, it's just part of the Vedic culture, or the Vedic sacrifice. That particular kind of sacrifice, that kind of yajna, it goes on within the material world on Mahaloka, and it goes on, at least in this cycle of yugas, it goes on in Treta Yuga. But it's part of a system. And the system is, the ultimate system is, Kritet Hadayato Vishnu, Chaitayam Yajato Mukai, Dwarpyam Paricharyam, Kalota Dari Kirtanam. Then the actual system is to meditate on Krishna. There's only one goal, actually, the Vedas, is to meditate on Krishna, to think about Krishna. Because material existence means to forget Krishna. And if we're thinking about Krishna, then we're not in material existence anymore, we're back in spiritual existence. Now, of course, we can think about Krishna, but because we're covered by the material nature, Therefore, our thinking about Krishna is not exactly the same quality as someone who's on the Prema Bhakti platform thinking about Krishna. When we think about Krishna, it's more or less, it's an intellectual exercise, although a very purifying intellectual exercise, the most purifying intellectual exercise. But for a person on the Prema Bhakti or the Bhava Bhakti platform, thinking about Krishna means that they're emotionally, well, they're experiencing bhava, ecstasy, thinking about Krishna. Their natural state of ecstasy or emotion is manifested when they think about Krishna. So that's what gives pleasure to Krishna, is bhava or prema. Feeling, transcendental feeling, is transcendently tasteful. And that's what Krishna, that's actually service to Krishna. But in the process of going towards Krishna, there's some feeling, just like a flame, however weak it may be, gives off some heat and some light. So just, even when we're thinking about Krishna intellectually, there's some positive, of course, thinking about Krishna. There's some pleasure given to Krishna. But if one is actually thinking about Krishna in love, then that's Krishna relishes that. And that, of course, that love for every living entity is it becomes, although we're very tiny, the capacity to love is actually unlimited. And every living entity has that capacity to love Krishna, and Krishna is most lovable. Therefore, Krite Tadayato Vishnu, in Treta Yuga and in Satya Yuga, when there was no distraction, people could simply meditate upon Krishna, and some of them at least came to the Bhava platform in such meditation. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tesham Yesham antikatam papam jananam punya karmanam Tedvan vamo nirmuktva bhajanti mam drida vrataha. Those who have practiced religious principles, actually it says that in the purport, but those who have practiced pious activities in the past and in this life, who've given up all sinful activities, are able to engage themselves in my service with determination. Yesham antikatam papam, those who are jananam punya karmanam, those who have given up all the reactions for past activities, who are performing pious activities, engage my devotional service with determination. And are free from sinful reaction, actually. Yesham antikatam papam, jananam punya karmanam, te dvandva, free from the duality of delusion, engage in my service with determination. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, the beginning of human life, civilized life, is to give up sinful activities. Giving up sinful activities means that one comes to the platform of cleanliness, mercy, austerity, and truthfulness. So that's the beginning of human life. Even the Kshatriyas are only trying to come to human life. Human life is characteristic by Brahminical behavior. Obviously, going into the forest and killing tigers is not what you expect from a gentleman. Although those who have that nature should be engaged in that way in order to purify themselves, and they should engage in that way for sacrifice to Vishnu. If they don't engage for sacrifice for Vishnu, then they'll engage for sense gratification. Just like Krishna came in order to kill the Kshatriyas, Parasuram came 21 times, 21 generations. He killed the Kshatriyas because they weren't really acting on the platform of Kshatriyas. They were acting they weren't protecting the people properly, and therefore they couldn't rightly be called real Kshatriyas. They're what we call in the category of Maya Priti Jnana. Their knowledge had been stolen by illusion because they thought themselves competitors to Krishna rather than his servants, and therefore they weren't actually performing yoga for Krishna, Vishnu. They were doing everything for their sense gratification. So human form of life actually begins with Brahminical consciousness, where one can actually be clean, one can actually be truthful, one can be austere, and one can be merciful. Now a Kshatriya is not supposed to be like that, always. Although there are Rajarshis, but generally speaking we see, even in Dwapara Yuga, so many less qualified Kshatriyas. Although physically powerful, like Jarasandha or Kamsa or whatever else, but they were actually unqualified as human beings. So the beginning of human life is religious principles. To give up sinful activity, illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. Then one can rise up to the platform of pious life. Pious life is Brahminical life, and the most above the Brahmins, which is the most pious life, is Krita Punya Punja, devotional service, is the perfection of Brahminical life. Brahminical life means working on the platform of Brahman, that I'm spirit. So Krishna has explained in the beginning of this chapter as a summary of the whole contents of the Gita summarized, that we're spirit. And now he's saying that we should work on the platform of spirit. And Arjuna, particularly, he was a Kshatriya. So Kshatriyas, they work on the platform of spirit in the Varnashram system by doing their duty in terms of performing a sacrifice. In Dwapara Yuga, of course, it was Dwapara, where Arjuna was at least present, it was deity worship. But there was also qualified Brahmins who were also doing sacrifice. So the Kshatriyas, they would protect the deities, as we see, and also arrange for some sacrifice. So in Dwapara Yuga, it was a little bit of a mixture. But the whole idea is that one should rise up by performing pious activities, cleansing the mind, one is able to conquer sinful reactions. How do you conquer sinful reactions? How do we conquer our sinful reactions? Does anyone know? How do you conquer sinful reactions? According to Bhagavad Gita. What is a sinful reaction, for instance? How do we know if we're getting a sinful reaction?
We suffer.
What's that?
We suffer.
Anyone suffer here?
Yes,
We got a few. Only one lady here doesn't suffer. Do you suffer, Mataji? Do you suffer sometimes? Okay.
It's hard to admit.
What's that?
It's hard to admit. For me, at least.
Okay.
Not just
But what is the manifestation of our sinful reactions?
misery.
No, it's more than just misery. It's our identification with this body. That's the sum total of our sinful reactions, our material conception of life. So even we rise up to the Brahminical platform by acting piously, we still have to conquer sinful reactions. That is our identification with attachment and aversion, which leads to abhiniveshita, our absorption of material existence. Material existence begins with avidya. We don't have complete or perfect knowledge of reality, and therefore we accept asmita, our false ego, as being real. And then as soon as we accept our false ego, we have so many likes and dislikes. And that leads to abhiniveshita, absorption of material identification, which leads to fear of death. So to conquer sinful reactions ultimately means to conquer death, to rise up to the Brahman platform of existence, to actually realize Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyavyasya cha shasvatasya cha dharmasya sukasya kantikasya cha. That Oh, mamchayo vyabhicharena bhakti-yogena sevate sagunan samatityatam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who's engaged in devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once comes to the level of Brahman. In other words, to conquer sinful reactions mean to go on with our devotional service in spite of whatever our circumstances are. That's how we conquer sinful reactions. And therefore Prabhupada used to point out how the devotees used to go on book distribution in spite of the weather, whether it was raining or snowing or cold or warm, too hot, they go on. So that was conquering sinful reactions. The same thing the yogis would do if they would build a fire around themselves in the summer and sit in the blazing hot sun trying to meditate on Krishna. They were trying to get out of the material concept of life too. But more important than that is to do something for Krishna, on behalf of Krishna, rather than just waste your time. Well, trying to get out of liberation from the material concept of life, better to liberate oneself in the spiritual concept of life by doing service to Krishna. And then one can actually accept real devotional service. In other words, when we're not overwhelmed by our minds in relationship to our false ego, trying to satisfy the demands of our senses and our mind, then the result is when we're free from that, then we can actually do something for Krishna rather than for our body and mind. After all, we're spiritual beings. We got to do something. No, I mean, unless you emerge in Brahman, which gets a little boring even. It's nice and warm there and there's no problems there. But it's boring after some time. After some billions or trillions of years, you get a little bored doing nothing, just enjoying yourself. So we have a choice. Either we serve Krishna or we serve the illusory energy. That's our only choice. We have no other choice. So when we decide to serve Krishna, then that's how we conquer sinful reactions. And then we can actually accept devotional service. We do things just to please Krishna, in consciousness of Krishna. Then one can rise up to the pure knowledge of Krishna. In other words, when our senses and mind are purified, we can actually feel Krishna's presence, and we're actually experiencing the happiness that comes from associating with Krishna. It's just like if you go into fire, you can't help but feel heat. So when we become conscious of Krishna, because Krishna is made out of endless varieties of pleasure and happiness, you can't but experience endless varieties of happiness and pleasure and love. So that's called Krishna consciousness, which actually we could say really noticeable Krishna consciousness begins after liberation from the material concept of life, where when our consciousness can actually experience Krishna. And then one can gradually go through ruchi and asakti. Ruchi is the taste increases becomes ever more blissful. And then asakti becomes so pleasurable that one can't give it up. Then one can meditate in trance upon the personality of Godhead, like they were trying to do in Satya Yuga. But in Treta Yuga, people got attached to sense gratification. In other words, Satya Yuga, they were mostly meditating. Those who were trying to achieve self-realization. But as Satya Yuga went on, people started to think about eating a little bit more prasadam than they really needed. And therefore Treta Yuga began. It always begins with the tongue. And so they started to talk about, food and getting money to get for food, to have nice prasadam at their festivals. And so Treta Yuga began. So then the methodology to sacrifice changed. Instead of meditation, it became throwing your extra money, gold or jewels, into the fire for Krishna. So those who are willing to do that, rather than eat and get fat, fat Brahmins, they were able to meditate upon Krishna again, because they gave up their attachment to their excess wealth. And so because meditated on Krishna, they became liberated and went back to the spiritual world. But then a Straight Yuga went on, and people were still performing sacrifice. A few people were getting liberated by meditation, as in Satya Yuga. Still, people became more attached, not only to food, but also to other kinds of material opulence. So therefore, temple worship began, where one would actually have to offer not only something into the extra money into the sacrifice, the actual physical yajna, but also would have to engage in seeing the deity regularly, utilizing their senses in the service of the deity, and then they become inspired to offer their excess wealth in service to Krishna, and then they could meditate. And in the yuga we're in now, people don't believe in the deity. They don't believe in regulating their senses at all. What to speak of giving their wealth to the Supreme Lord? If they give it, it's a business. And therefore no one is progressing towards meditating on Krishna. Nor do people even think it's the goal. Nate vidu swarta katimi Vishnu. They don't believe that the goal of life is to meditate upon the Supreme Person, because they don't even believe in the Supreme Person, but to speak of meditating on Him. And even if they believe in Him, they don't really think that He has a spiritual body full of bliss, because they don't experience anything full of bliss. And what to speak of that, they don't really believe that, they're never thinking about controlling their mind, because they don't control even their activities, what to speak of their minds. Therefore, the chanting of the holy name is introduced, where people don't have to begin at least with giving money or regulating their activities or giving their wealth in sacrifice or controlling their minds. They can just chant Hare Krishna. But the idea of chanting Hare Krishna is not just chanting Hare Krishna in this age, as is introduced in every age, will not bring one back to Godhead necessarily. Because in every age of chanting Hare Krishna, every Kali Yuga, chanting Hare Krishna is introduced. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is a special Kali Yuga, because the sacrifice was introduced by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that sacrifice is to surrender to Krishna in separation, to come to the platform of spreading the glories of Krishna as Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the love of Srimati Radharani and Vrindavan, Leela especially. So, if one takes the chanting Hare Krishna with the aim of going back to the spiritual world, through the progression, one can chant, and then by experiencing the pleasure of chanting, one can give up sinful activity. That's why we generally introduce people to chant first, and then if they chant enough, then they start following the regular principles, especially if we give them prasadam. And then by following the regular principles, they can start doing devotional service. Hopefully. As we see, it's hard to get people now. We're not so organized to get everyone to do devotional service, either in the temple and even in their homes. And if they do devotional service, then they can rise up to the platform of conquering sinful reactions. They can start doing they can go in Harinam, do something as a sacrifice for Krishna in spite of the inconveniences. Even to come to the temple is inconvenient. You have to come here is inconvenient. So even that, people are unwilling to do unless there's a feast. This isn't that right? Anyhow, at least they come because there's a feast and prasadam is purified. Then they can, then the next step of chanting is you can actually accept it as a devotional process rather than, mechanically, shnik, shnik, ram, ram, da, da, da. can actually chant out of feeling with some love and devotion. And then the next stage of that, one can actually feel Krishna's presence when one is chanting. And then the next stage after that, one falls in love with Krishna and can't stop chanting. Can't stop remembering Krishna. Because in one sense, there's no difference between chanting and if one chants purely, one will automatically remember Krishna and come to the perfection of Satya-yoga. So here, this is Bhagavad Gita is given to us for Kali Yuga. Krishna has explained that we're not this body to Arjuna, and now he's introducing the idea of the sacrifices for this age, whether it was Dwapara Yuga or the beginning of Kali Yuga or Kali Yuga. Because even, it says, Stane Stita, what is that? All the world becomes joyful hearing your holy name in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And all becomes attached to you. The demons are afraid and they flee here and there. All this is rightly done. So even in this Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken in Treta Yuga, the introduction of the chanting of the holy name is indicated as the process in text number... Sane Rishikesha Tava Prakritya Jagat Parishat Pariyajate Cha Rakshamsi Bitani Disho Javanti Sarvain Namasyanti Chesida Sangha. Arjuna said, O Master of the senses, the world becomes joyful upon hearing your name, thus everyone becomes attached to you. Although the perfected beings offer you their respectful homage, the demons are afraid and they flee here and there. All this is rightly done. So we have to understand the chanting is given to us, but the chanting itself has the same progression. The progression, the chanting, has the same progression as every other progression, every other yuga. To going from chanting, for instance, in Kali Yuga, to doing service, devotional service to the deity, to surrendering one's assets, to utilize everything for the sake of Krishna, for the mission of Krishna. And then ultimately rising to the platform of meditating in trance and love with Krishna. So that's achieved through the chanting, if it's done as one progresses to the purification of the chanting. And it's done in Dwarka Yuga, and it's done in Treta Yuga, and it's done in Satya Yuga. Satya Yuga is the most direct, and Kali Yuga is a progression towards the qualities that were obtained, that people obtained in Dwapara Yuga, the qualities that they had in Treta Yuga, and ultimately the qualities they developed in Satya Yuga. And the whole universe is like that. From the lowest planet down to the highest, they're all progressions. For instance, on this planet, the earthly planet, mostly people are just engaged in animalistic propensities, at least in the beginning of Kali Yuga, because they have no idea what life is like. But previously, the middle planetary system is the Earth planet. It's a planet of activity, of karma. So people either progressed doing the sacrifice recommended to the age, like now people who chant Hare Krishna, they progress. And generally speaking, many people progress towards the heavenly planets, Indraloka, where you're pious. Indraloka is the planet of pious people. And if they progress beyond that, they go to Mahaloka, the planet of sacrifice, offering their whatever extra they have. And from there they go to Tapaloka, austerity, and Janaloka, knowledge of Brahman, Siddhaloka, and then they go to Brahmaloka, where one is able to meditate. Primary is meditation of Krishna. So the universe is set up like that. The progress in consciousness. The whole universe is just set up for progressing in consciousness, from material attachment to knowledge, to liberation, to Krishna consciousness. The whole universe is set up like that. And the activities were given in every yuga, especially on this planet, is all set up like that. And even the heavenly planets is set up like that, if one wants to progress. It's all the same thing. There's one yeyatamam prabhadante, tam sadhaiva bhajamyaham, mama vartmanu vartante, manusha partha sarvashaha. All of them, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha. So there's one path towards higher consciousness, and it's approached in different ways, apparently different, but it's all the same thing actually. We just don't sometimes understand it. Any questions? Thank you. Yes.
I don't know, in Gita, I don't know where exactly. Somewhere in Bhagavad Gita there is this verse that a sacrifice without charity is performed in a mode of ignorance or passion.
Well, there's a number of references that you can say. And at the end of the 15th chapter, Krishna says, actually at the end of the 17th chapter, so the actual last verse in Krishna's instructions is, you can say, is in the 17th chapter. Ashradaya hutam datam tapastatam kritam chaya asari duchate parda nachatat pratiyo nohiya. 1728. Anything done as sacrifice, charity, and penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pritha, is impermanent. It's called a sat, and is useless both in this world and the next. Is that something that you're referring to? Or you can go with charity in the mode of ignorance, charity in the mode of passion, which is also in this chapter, or charity in the mode of goodness.
I think sacrifice in the mode of passion or
That's the 18th. That's the 18th chapter. Well, sacrifice, that's 17th chapter also. But that's what I just said. Ashwadaya hatam datam pastatam kritam jaya asadityuchate parda nachatat pratiyo noiha. Anything done as sacrifice, charity, and penance without faith in the Supreme is useless both in this world and in the next.
No, not that one, but that sacrifice that is performed without giving charity is in...
Okay, that's also 17th chapter.
Without
Charity perform the adeshed kaliya danam apatrevya sudiyate asakritam avagyatam tattamasamudaritam. And charity performed at a impure place at an improper time to unworthy persons without proper attention and respect is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Okay, we'll go to sacrifice now.
Sacrifice.
Okay, sacrifice in the mode of ignorance. See, charity, sacrifice. And sacrifice, vidihinam ashistaham, mantrahinam adakshinam, shradavirahitam yagnam, tamasa parichaksate. Any sacrifice performed without regard for the direction of scripture, without distribution of prasadam, of spiritual food, without chanting of Vedic hymns and consideration of the priest, remunerations of the priest, without faith is considered to be in the mode of ignorance.
Maybe I don't remember correctly, but I have in memory.
Which one is this? If you're talking about sacrifice, I can't.
It's not sure.
Well, this is what Krishna in the 18th chapter, he talks about knowledge in the modes, then he talks about faith, about intelligence in the modes, he talks about work in the modes, he talks about determination in the modes, talks about happiness in the modes. So, what are you referring to? Anyhow, what's the question? Maybe we can ask.
The if sacrifice in this age is chanting the
Yes.
holy name of Krishna.
That's right.
So and it should be performed at least in the mode of goodness.
Pure goodness. At least in the mode. Of course,
Yes.
the mode of,
So is it even possible without giving charity?
well, without giving charity,
The mode of goodness.
how can you be in the mode of goodness without giving charity? No.
I mean,
No, it's not possible. You can't. You can't be pure. You can't actually be in the mode, situated in the mode of goodness, because everyone is giving charity to something. So if you're not performing charity in the mode of goodness, you must be doing it in passion and ignorance. In other words, whatever resources we have, like Krishna says, sacrifice, charity, and penance. Everyone has to do it. So sacrifice means where we utilize our energy, and charity is where we're giving our wealth. And penance is what we do in order to get material gain or loss in the material world. We have to get up early to go to work or whatever, that's penance. And then we get some remuneration for it. And if we do some sacrifice, that's our work. And then we get some remuneration and we have to utilize it. Either we give in charity to our family or to the dog or to some cause or something, or to Krishna. We have to give the results somewhere. So we're not giving it in goodness according to the direction of Scripture, to the proper persons, to the proper time, remunerations to the priests, etc. Then we must be giving it to impure people at an improper time. Therefore we get reactions for that. If you give to a sinful person, then you share his sinful reactions. If you give him to a pious person, but with the idea of getting something in return, then you'll get something in return. And your mind will be covered by material desire to get something in return. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
It's not what most people want to hear, but anyway. Yes.
This is just a follow-up question on Prabhu's. So do we get some sinful reaction if you buy something from Lidl?
From where?
From the shop.
Yeah, if you're not in Krishna consciousness, we get sinful reactions. As soon as we're not in Krishna consciousness, whatever we do. But eating is something special because people, whatever they cook, even if it's mechanically done, consciousness is infused in the food. So when we eat the food, part of our digestion, subtle digestion, is we digest their consciousness. So if we eat in Krishna consciousness, then we may be able to counter it to some degree, depending on the extent of our Krishna consciousness. If we offer it, we eat in Krishna consciousness, then there's no reaction because we're doing it purely to serve Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is present fully. There can't be any sinful reaction. Prahlad Maharaj ate poison, but because he was fully in Krishna consciousness, he wasn't affected by it. But we may not be so conscious of Krishna. Therefore, the devotees used to go on Sankirtan, and they buy things at the store, and sometimes they weren't very conscious of the fact that this has to eat. There's no, it's not because you go on Sankirtan, now you can eat anything you want, anytime, you'll get, of course if you work hard enough, you can probably eat anything at any time. But if you don't have the right consciousness when you're eating, it doesn't matter what your service is. You're going to get some reaction for it. What to speak of the impurities that people put into the food, which are poisonous. So unless one is fully conscious, and then the subtle reactions too. If you're associating with someone who's angry, you start feeling frustrated, a little bit of their emotions too. You associate with people who are extremely happy, then you start feeling their emotions. So that when you start eating something, it goes internally, and their emotions go internally into you. You have to be pretty conscious. If you're not, then you have to experience their emotions. Therefore, it's not advised to get food from sick people, because their emotions are full of. They're emotionally. They usually have the emotions of a sick person. The vibration, we can say. Does that make sense? Anything else? Yes.
I didn't understand when you were talking about that chanting is present in all yogas, but there is different, I don't know, potency or I don't know.
No, the potency is, Krishna doesn't change. Potency is transcendental. But they're automatic. For instance, in Satya Yuga, when you're meditating on Krishna, the holy name is automatically there, because the holy name is Krishna and his energies. So if you meditate on Krishna, then the name, form, quality, and pastimes are there when you're meditating on him. But in Kali Yuga, we have a hard time even getting the name down. What to speak of remembering spontaneously the form, or the quality, or the associates of the pastimes. So it's not like in Kali Yuga the name is different in Satya Yuga. It's just that they're always chanting Hare Krishna in their meditation. Fully, just like srimad-bhagavatam. Srimad-bhagavatam is a form of Krishna, in the form of srimad-bhagavatam. It's full of Krishna's name, form, quality, and pastimes and associates. So that's called Krishna consciousness. It's the same as when we chant Hare Krishna at perfection, we're living in srimad-bhagavatam. Is that understandable? And in Satya Yuga, for instance, when they're doing deity worship, if they're spiritually advanced, they remember this is Krishna. If they're worshipping Radha and Krishna or Lakshmi Narayana, they realize this is Krishna. It's not that they look at the deity and they think of Mickey Mouse or something. No, they think about Krishna. They're serving Krishna. So therefore they're chanting the holy name. It's only when they're offering sacrifice in Treta Yuga, it's being offered to Krishna specifically. Even in Maharaloka, they're offering it to the deity, Krishna. Therefore their whole life revolves around sacrificing for Krishna. Therefore they're always chanting Hare Krishna too. Everything is connected with Krishna. Anything else?
Thank you, Maharaj, for this lecture. I have just one question on when you are in the service, you do sankirtan, you do whatever, try to really be in this serving mood and do the services. You are feel happy and you are like in some bubble, but there you how to say, you see that there is a lot of these wrong patterns, wrong things to improve, and etc. But somehow it's really hard. If you can say something about that, how we can work on ourselves more proper.
Well, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, we develop these good qualities. This is in chapter, what is it, 10? I guess it's 10. The beginning of chapter 10. Somudo Shema Satvitama Shema Sukadukam Bhavo Bhavo Vayam Cha Vayam Evacha Hingsa Samata Tushti Tato Danam Yasho Yasha Bhavanti Sarabhutanam Tak Eva Pritak Vida. All these qualities are manifest throughout the three worlds, the universe and the human form of society and the society of the demigods. There are many forms of humanity on other planets, and these qualities are there. Now, for one who wants to advance in Krishna consciousness, Krishna creates all these qualities, but the person develops them himself from within. One who engages in devotional service to the Supreme Lord develops all the good qualities as arranged by the Supreme Lord. So we see we're doing something wrong, we pray to Krishna. Please correct me. Please take away these qualities and let me develop good qualities. So we see them, and then we decide that we want to get rid of them, and then Krishna gets rid of them for us. We have no power just because we're not the doer, we're the desirer. So it's good when we see we're doing something wrong, then we should think it's wrong. And then ask Krishna, please help get rid of them, and then he'll arrange for it. He'll offer them to us, opportunities to fulfill those desires, and we say, I don't want it, then he purifies us. He sees we've actually come to the platform. We're willing to go on with our service and not get distracted by these things. Then he purifies us. He reveals himself. He becomes a little bit more present in our consciousness, and that takes it away. I mean, all impediments are just impediments to remembering Krishna, that's all. Anything else? Yes.
It's connected with this, theme. I have some problem with that sometimes because on one side, we are asking Krishna to remove something to help us, but then we are doing the same thing, same mistake, again and again, and then, it's hard to ask him. I mean.
Yeah, we'll stop doing the mistake.
It's, yes, also.
There's no other alternative. Otherwise, it's, we have to wait till we become put into a situation where somehow or another our sincerity manifests. But we don't take it, obviously it's not bothering us enough to take it seriously. But as far as, we have to also see whether we're doing the same thing to the same intensity and the same amount of duration or the same consistency. So we may be making improvement, but we may be a little bit used to, as they say, beating ourselves. That we're too caught up with our perfection that even the slightest thing we get upset that why is it existing.
I don't think that's the perfection.
But we have to see if there's any improvement. If we're actually had any sincerity in asking Krishna to help us, then we must be, trying to improve. There must be some improvement. Or else we're not really taking it seriously at all, but that's pretty rare. So it's good to try to remember, what was I doing 20 years ago? Was I doing it the same way, to the same duration, to the same consciousness, or I made some improvement? Otherwise, Maya is trying to discourage us all the time, saying it doesn't work, you're not making any progress, it's useless. Just surrender to me.
Because it's hard to pray to Krishna sincerely if you pray for something 10 times and then you make all the
try
time
11 times. Try 11 times. We have no choice.
111.
We have no choice. Either we surrender to Krishna or we have to stay in the material world. We didn't come to Krishna to process the Krishna consciousness because we made a vow to stay in the material world. No, devotional service is to get out of the material world. But we've been here since time immemorial, most of us. So that's billions and trillions of lifetimes of Brahma. So we have to be a little patient also. Even if we went through 1,000 more births and deaths before we went to the material, back to the spiritual world. It's nothing. It's one moment in Brahma's life. So we have to learn patience too. All right. Hvala, Grandhara srimad-bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.
Oh, these flowers actually smell and have an aroma. Really unusual. Is it? It feels like winter.
Ja, to hitim napisati, ker je povedal, hvala neko.
You forgot? No.
Yeah, what happened? No, I went down to, because I was supposed to sleep to meet the shower for the lunch. You take for lunch, and I'm there, and then I was told by Doman, something else, and then I went down. And then I was starting to prepare, and she said she would take care, and then I was going to, I just missed you for 2 minutes.
Oh, the thing is I didn't get the shower until the quarter, but
Yeah, I know.
I had a conversation. I'm sorry to you.
No,
Especially after a fast day.
no, because I have to service simultaneously, and I was, yeah,
You can't be two places at once.
no,
Okay.
but
Maybe we should.
yeah. No, I should have, because Doman was doing the Govinda, and then I went down, and then up, and then.
What are these informants? I hear that better I do it. I think.
You informed me also. When you delegate me also.
Winter.
So I have double check.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever they go like that, just in the week, I ask them for the help. And
Yeah, it was working, that's the day, usually it was working.
yeah.
I mean, with them when it was working,
After festival syndrome.
Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare
Drugi posod za prolaz.
Da?
Ne mičo, ne silom, ampak on iz Ljubljana, da, on je upravno servisirajo šure, ozvučuje to drugače.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Zakaj imaš Hare Hare Hare? Tam še na koncu spremljen. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama